Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. I'm creating this video because I've seen a lot of people with an interest in trying to leverage Maschine as a plugin in Logic, as well as recording Midi directly into Logic through the Maschine controller. And I've discovered a way to do that that I think is somewhat useful. Again, it probably doesn't cover every aspect of what people want to do. But I wanted to share it, and if it's of any value to anyone, great. So the objective of this video is to basically create a Logic project that uses Maschine as a plugin, route each pad to individual channels in Logic, which there are plenty of videos out on the internet describing, but I'll quickly show that, so that each channel in Logic goes to, or each channel in Maschine goes to an individual channel in Logic. I want to be able to record MIDI directly into Logic from Maschine. And then as a bonus, I want to show the possibilities of also recording melodic lines, not polyphonic, but melodic lines like bass lines and simple synth stabs into Logic from Maschine as a controller. So I'm going to start by opening up Native Instruments Control Editor. When we look at Control Editor, I've taken the base template that comes in Control Editor and created two additional templates. One that leverages and creates MIDI for recording, drum tracks and multiple track rhythms that trigger MIDI in Logic, and then also one that allows for melodic content, and I'll explain both of these now. So if I switch to the Logic MIDI template I created, I basically on page A of the template, I've created or kind of reconfigured the 16 pads to operate in a particular way. So essentially every pad is assigned to an individual MIDI channel 1 through 16, and it is sending over the C3 note basically. So pad 1 will on channel 1 send C3. If we switch to pad 2, it's sending to channel 2 on C3 with note C3, pad 3 to channel 3 with note C3, and so on straight through pad 16 sending to channel 16 on note C3. I've just simply renamed these up here so that I kind of it's more easily recognizable what these pads are and what they're sending. Because there's no real aftertouch on just creating bass rhythms for me in Logic, I turned off the press action on all of these pads, these 16 pads on this template, so there is no press action on any of these pads. You'll see how this works in Logic in a moment. So again, each of these pads in MIDI mode will be sending a channel corresponding to their pad number 1 through 16, all sending the MIDI note of C3. Now if we from here go back out to the templates tab and select a melodic MIDI template. It's melodic MIDI parentheses 16. I'll explain that in a second. I've only reconfigured page E for the purposes of this demonstration, but essentially this gives me the notes, MIDI notes C3 through D sharp 4. And what I've done is for all 16 of these pads, and you could do this for every page, so you could have access across the entire range of notes. I've reconfigured and assigned these pads to send on channel 16. Correspondingly, you could create a version of this for channel channel 15, or you could correspondingly say, hey, I'm only ever going to have melodic notes C3 through D sharp 4 or something, and make each page send the proper notes on the channels that matter to you, so that you could record melodic melodic lines into Logic via Maschine through this MIDI template. So on all 16 of these pads, the difference is that each of these pads sends the MIDI channel, the note on MIDI channel 16. So like I said, C3, MIDI channel 16, C sharp 3, MIDI channel 16, D3, a MIDI channel 16, and so on. So this template will, for this page, right, just for demonstration purposes, I only updated this one page, but for pad page E, all of the MIDI notes that are on this pad page will send the corresponding note on channel 16. I'll show you why I do this later. And again, you could make multiple templates sending on different, if you wanted the whole array of notes available on Maschine for each individual channel, or you could make different pages that send on different different channels. And so, you know, that gives you the capability to send melodic notes to a single channel, which I'll be showing you later. Something that I think, you know, I want to call out and just make a mention of is the lot of, you know, what I learned about Controller Editor has come from Courtney Hawkins, and I'll share a link to Courtney's channel and specifically to the video that shows how to map Controller Editor to Logic function in the description of this video. So I want to say a special thank you to Courtney for that. And she continues to output great videos as it relates to Maschine and other things of that nature. So thanks, Courtney, and I'll pop a link to her channel and to the video in the description. Additionally, to be able to create more complex melodic lines that have, you know, a broader array of notes available to you, I'm going to show you a template setup that I have, and I mostly do melodic lines into Logic this way rather than via Maschine being recorded from melodic lines. But I'm going to show both in the video. I'm going to show you modifications I've made to. I own a complete controller, Native Instruments complete controller, and you could do this probably in any MIDI keyboard by making templates in that MIDI keyboard. But if we look at complete controller and go to the MIDI setup of complete controller, you'll see that I've created 4 different templates, each of them broadcasting on 4 different channels: channel 13, channel 14, channel 15, channel 16. And simply all I've done is gone into each of the areas that matter in here, knobs, buttons, keys, and changed them to the corresponding channel. So for this template, they all broadcast on channel 13. This template, they are, you know, broadcasting 14, and so on, 15 and 16. And I use this mostly when it comes to recording melodic MIDI into Logic to trigger Maschine. I typically will use complete controller because it gives me the, you know, rather than a single page of 16 notes in Maschine, this gives me the broad array of notes available on the keyboard to trigger. So I will go on to show how I use that also later in this video. So now let's jump over into Logic and start to see how all this works together. So I've got an instance of Logic open with a single track, MIDI instrument track on it, and I'm going to load an instance of Maschine 2 multi-output, because as I said, one of the requirements for me is to be able to output Maschine to multiple instances of multiple channels inside of Logic. So here we have an instance of Maschine set up. One of the things right out of the gate that you'll see in my core template that I have, my audio out is already mapped to external channels. So every channel is audio MIDI mapped to external channels, and if we look at the mixer, you can see that they all go to external, each individual external channel. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of show you how I set this up. I'm going to close out Maschine. I'm going to open up the mixer in Logic, and you'll see there's this plus button that allows you to add, multiple channels. So I'm going to add all the channels, although we're only going to use 8 pad channels. I'm going to add all 16 channels to this for the purpose of showing the melodic MIDI on channels 16 and 15 and 16. So if, just for purposes, I'm just going to say we're going to make this pad 1, pad 2, sorry for the hold up here, just to make it easy for everything to correspond as we continue to walk through the demo here. Pad 8, pad 9, pad 10, all right, so we've got all those pads set up, and they're all getting their input from the different channels in Maschine. So we will see those external values or external audio that's coming out of Maschine will come to the proper tracks internally here. Let's go back into Maschine, and let's throw a standard drum kit on here, and I'm gonna maybe see if I can. I'm just going to use this 909 kit to start, and we'll go back and look at the addition of the 909 kit. Just so you can also see how the MIDI is supposed to be set up on here, we'll go up to our individual sound up here on the left hand side. We can either click on this area or this area here, which opens up our ability to look at input for MIDI. Our MIDI input for every channel is going to be set to host and the corresponding channel to the track, so or to the pad. So pad 1 gets its input from host and channel 1. Pad 2 gets its input from host and channel 2, 3 host and channel 3, and these correspond to the MIDI template that I had before, where each of the pads is broadcasting the C3 note on the corresponding channels all the way through. So when we look at this, and there's kind of an interesting point of how do we make this connect in a second that I'm going to show you, but I'm going to set this up to have some some additional melodic sounds in here. So for the bass, I'm going to find a sound, and I think I would like to use the acoustic bass sound. Let's see if we can find that real. So we've got this acoustic bass sound, and I'm going to drop this onto channel 16. And while Maschine decides what it's doing and bringing that acoustic bass into channel 16, I'm going to double check and make sure that we continue to input on the host of channel 16 and we output external 16, so we're good there. And then I was looking for a synth sound, and I had something in here. I don't remember. I think it might. No, that's not it. Yeah, we'll use this 7th Hell for a synth sound that I'll put on track 15. And we've got that correspondingly working there. So we've got synth sound there, acoustic bass there, and we've got the standard standard 909 kit operating everywhere else. And I'm just going to, I don't know if everybody else feels this way, but I'm just going to go through all these tracks right here and just bring their output level down a bit, because these tend to be really hot coming into Logic, and just want to not have them kind of overblow the on their input. Well, all right, okay, all right, pretty comfortable with that. So now we basically have Maschine set up the way we need it set up to begin to be the audio, you know, the sound source for the MIDI that we're going to end up recording inside of Logic. So I'm going to minimize this, or close out Maschine for a minute, and show you kind of where the magic for this happens. So I'm going to add a MIDI region on this track. And oh, one other thing that I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to make this is kind of something that I prefer to do for these all these channels. I like to make a summing stack so that all of these channels from Maschine come into a single summing stack, and I can kind of control the output of that all in the. I'm going to change the name of this to Maschine Bus. And so there's no need for you to create multiple tracks here to take the MIDI in. We're only going to ever send MIDI in through this the track that actually has Maschine on it. And so I'm just going to leave these here and not create tracks for those channels, so I don't muddy up my track area. I'm not going to be sending any MIDI directly in from individual channels. The trick here actually is this new type of MIDI region called a pattern region. And I'm going to add a pattern region, and by default the pattern region adds 4 bars of pattern region to the track. But it only when you add it, it only actually adds one bar of notes. So right now this is a 16th note pattern. There's 16 steps. It's set to 16 notes. There are many videos out there on the step sequencer and this type of MIDI region, the pattern MIDI region. I'm going to change this to 32 steps so that we have 2 bars, and I'm actually going to reduce the size of this MIDI region down to 2 bars so that we're only kind of working in the 2 bars that we're in. I'm going to turn on the loop here and drop that down to two bars, and you'll see automatically it sticks in 8 subtracks in this pattern region. And if I hit play, you'll see that these play through that 2-bar phrase and repeat, you know, not too dissimilar from what a pattern in Maschine looks like. Here's where the magic comes in to map these two things together. If you click on this information bar right here, this sidebar opens up and has 3 different areas: pattern, row, and step. The real trick to all of this sits inside of the row area, and when I open up the row area, it gives me the option to change the MIDI channel that this row broadcasts and receives from. Right, so coming in, the track all the way on the outside, we're going to play around with this a bit, but the track on the outside has to, you know, it kind of controls more broadly what happens, but these individual rows have their own ability to control what MIDI channel they're on. So what I'm going to do is, very simply, I'm going to go through all of these 8 rows here, and these 8 rows are, I'm going to change all of them to broadcast the note C3, right? So that we're getting the note out of um, out of um, of Logic, triggering the right note in Maschine. So all of these tracks I'm going to change to C3. And if it's helpful, each of these individual rows can also have its own name if you'd prefer, right? So we're broadcasting the note C3 on all of them here as I've gone and reassigned all of them. But you can still go to the individual track and change your own name and say, oh, this is my kick, right? And this is my snare, etc. If you wanted to. I'm just going to leave them the way they are for now, but the real magic comes in that the kick is going to broadcast on MIDI channel 1, and I'm going to go to the snare and I'm going to change that to correspond to MIDI channel 2, and this will be MIDI channel 3, and so on and so forth to MIDI channel 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, one of the keys here is for this to work and for you to be able to record into Logic is 2 things have to happen. Number 1, you never want to press the record button up in the top of Logic up here. This will change this pattern region when you start playing notes into a regular standard region, and will you'll lose everything you did. You do have to have the track record enabled, and over here on the right hand side of the pattern region you have to record enable the pattern region. The next thing we have to do is we have to shift our Maschine into MIDI mode. And you can toggle back and forth depending on, the method you do that with depends on the Maschine version you have, whether you have a Maschine Mini or a Maschine MK3. That's what I happen to have. So for me, it's a shift MIDI channel MIDI that shifts into MIDI mode, and then shift left and right arrow key to move through the different templates. Or you could just very simply, open the control editor and select the Logic MIDI, and that'll shift your Maschine into the proper MIDI mode. And right now that's what I'm using. So we'll be in Logic MIDI mode now, and because I've created the corresponding tracks, I have the channels mapped. My Maschine will play the notes via MIDI by broadcasting the MIDI out into Logic, and Logic sending the MIDI back into the Maschine plugin at that point, like standard MIDI does, MIDI controller external does to any plugin inside of Maschine. And just for to show you, we could very easily add another track, right? And we'll add another C3 track to the end here, and I'll go into this and broadcast this right now. This is broadcasting the kick, no different than this one, right? But if I go down here and change this to MIDI channel 9, we now will have 9 pads. And if I play my Maschine controller 9, I get that sound. So this is how we use Maschine as a MIDI controller to control the track, map the tracks to the proper MIDI channels, and push that back into the Maschine plugin. So as I said, to record, we have to make sure that the record enable is on the track. The record enable is on the pattern region, And I typically, for the purposes of what I'm doing, select my MK3 virtual input and have it MIDI in all channels and MIDI out all channels. I do this because sometimes I lean on my keyboard controller or something else, and it kind of creates havoc. The pattern region, if you send in a MIDI signal from a channel that's not represented, here it will create automatically in the flow, create a new row in the pattern region, and it starts to get messy. So I just limit the MIDI import from currently to, and I'm going to change this later when I do some of the melodic versions, to the MK3 virtual input, which is what broadcasts these. And again, we still continue to get the sounds we would expect, the kicks and and if we open up again, my machine's in MIDI mode. So if we quickly look at the control header, we can see we're in MIDI mode. It's connected, and we're in MIDI in the Logic mode. If we look back at Logic and we open up, first we can look at the mixer in Logic. We can see that these are broadcasting audio to the proper channels, 15 and 16, all the way out there. And if we open up the Maschine plugin, very similarly, we can see that we're getting our notes into the proper pads. Same thing. We see the outputs in the different channels in Maschine from there. So now let's look at recording, right? So if we open the pattern region up again, like I said, we make sure our channel is set to record. We make sure that our pattern region is set to record. I'm going to put on the metronome just so I have a reference for that. And we hit spacebar or play, our region starts to be active for recording. Right, so here we are, and I can add a kick. Now I messed up this one, and we can do just like in Maschine. I can get rid of that and repaint it over here. And add my snare in. And hi-hat. And you can see we're recording. So I've got a little rhythm going there. Again, this has all been recorded in Logic by Maschine, with Maschine being the MIDI controller, mapped through these different sections, these different rows in this pattern region that are then triggering back to the Maschine plugin from there. Now let's move on and record a quick melodic line. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to controller editor, and we're going to switch from Logic. Actually, yeah, let's do that. We'll switch from that to yeah. You know what? First, I think we'll record the synth stabs. So we're going to leave this in Logic MIDI mode. That's not going to make a difference. And we're going to go over back into Logic, and we're going to go back into Logic. Sorry about that. Back into Logic, and we're going to add another row. And if I click the down arrow and go into Notes and select Melodic, we get a melodic row. I'm going to move that to the bottom. And when we look at the row, right, these rows are still the same, 8, 9 channel. We go down to this row. I'm going to change this to channel 15, right? And I'm going to set up my complete controller to broadcast on channel 15. And if we do that and go up into this import here and select complete controller, I have an S88 MK2, port 1, and then make my MIDI in channel 15. We now should get the synth stabs off of my MK2 MIDI controller. So this right now is broadcasting, receiving information in from channel 15 and pushing back out to channel 15. And if we open up the Maschine plugin and we look at channel 15 over here, this 7th hell, and I play my my S88 MK2, we'll see that I'm playing different notes across the keyboard into Logic via my MK2. Same thing as we just did before. I'm gonna close this. We have the channel record enabled. We have the pattern region record enabled, and we're ready to go. And I just hit spacebar, right? Now we have a melodic line recorded in Logic that's triggering MIDI in the Maschine plugin. And as you can see, you have the capability to have notes long pressed and span multiple notes inside of Logic that will push that MIDI note information over into the Maschine plugin. So from here, now I want to record a melodic bass line into Logic, and I'm just going to shut off my camera so you can see Logic more fully, and you can see the longer, the longer notes that were recorded from the keyboard in there. But for us to record a melodic bass line, I want to do that using Maschine as the controller. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. Over to Control Editor. Sorry, I got to get it up in the screen here a little bit better. But I'm going to go back over to Control Editor, and in Control Editor, I'm going to select the melodic MIDI template now. The other thing I just want to point out on the melodic MIDI template is in the assignments I did the press action remains polypressure, right? So it allows for extended notes, and so when we record a bass line on this, unlike the Logic MIDI template that I made that was just for drum notes that had no press action, because we don't want repeated drum notes and things like that. At least I don't when recording drum rhythms. The melodic MIDI, I do want to have press action after, so I can have extended notes and things of that nature. So now my machine is in Logic MIDI mode, and I have on page E C3s through D sharp 4. And if we go back into Logic, we can see I'm going to create a new track, a new melodic row. Actually, let's call it what they call it. I'm going to create a new melodic row, and like before, I'm actually going to go up here and rename this one synth so that we know what we've got there, and I'm going to name this one bass because this is what's on channel 16 in Maschine. I'm going to change this channel to 16 on this row so that we now have the bass, the acoustic bass that's assigned in Maschine on pad 16. So we go over here and look at pad 16. We have the acoustic bass on pad 16. That's what's being triggered and controlling this item. And if I play my pads, got to change this up here back to machine virtual input and have it broadcasting or receiving data from channel 16. Now we have, because our controller is, we have our bass C3 through C D sharp 4 available for recording again. And so we're gonna we have record mode on the track. We have record mode over here on the pattern region, and again we press spacebar or play. We go back into this mode, and you got and there we have MIDI recorded. We have MIDI recorded into Logic from Maschine as a MIDI controller, and you can very easily pop back and forth if you want to do some things with the Maschine in the Maschine plugin by just simply on my MK3 hitting Shift channel MIDI, and that'll shift it back into plugin mode, and you can make adjustments and use that for for adjusting your plugin with the Maschine hardware. It's simply just clicking on Shift and channel MIDI to toggle back and forth from being in MIDI mode to being in plugin mode. And that's the way I've learned, or I've set myself up so that I can use the Maschine hardware to record MIDI into Logic to trigger the Maschine plugin. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, just add them to the comments of the video, and I'm gonna take some time to make sure I answer any questions I could, and maybe I'll make some follow-up videos if I learn more. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something.